Good evening, everyone. This is Henry Gamble with SimplerOptions.com, and tonight's free video I wanted to share my outlook for the next run in the S&Ps. Now, of course, as always, you got to take this a step at a time, and the analysis that Danielle shared with you in last night's free video, I feel really does echo my sentiment, which is to say you had a little bit of overhead resistance that came in right here in this area, and that was just a comparison of the rally that preceded the decline in relationship to the rally that we have been through recently. You can find that in the Qs pretty cleanly. Same concept applies here in the S&Ps. Okay, you run into a little bit of that symmetrical resistance, and we get a day of anxiety or a day of pullback, whatever you'd like to call the S&Ps being down 20 points today. You could kind of feel that anxiety in the markets. Okay, we pull back a little bit. What I would have you look to here, and of course none of us know what the next moment holds, but it is a striking resemblance to me to look at this squeeze right here, and I'm highlighting the daily bar prior to and then just after the squeeze resolution. So you can look at the idea, which is to say, okay, we've got the squeeze in play and we break below the 21. That's the first heads up that the bullish trend is not quite as clean and happy as we might like to see. Then you retrace back into the 21 and get hammered from there. I am looking for just the inverse of this idea. This does not mean that I'm piling in 100% to the long side, but it does mean that, because you can see the same concept here where you have this fresh squeeze, you push up through the 21 EMA, and if we were to pull back into that 2673 area, that's the next area that I have to consider a buy. Now, of course, if the S&Ps, if we wake up on Friday and you're down here at 2650, I'd probably have to give that a little bit of time to see how it traded. You know, I wouldn't want to jump right out into it, but the 2673 is the current level that I'm watching for support. Of course, if we're going to see anything get going there, we're going to need to see Apple start to catch up a little bit. Now, there's a couple of things I was looking at in here, and that 618 retracement just below the market will be helpful. But one thing that I think is more helpful here is because you're going to look at most people, some people may look at this and say, oh, that is a break of the trend line, and this is a big problem for Apple. I will absolutely take the other side of that trade. Now I need to see that trade set up for me, but what it is to say is that that break of that trend line is completely meaningless to me. What I'm going to look at instead is to say, what does symmetry look like in relationship to the previous declines that we have seen? Because what this is telling me is you've seen a 1-2 day decline for a given point value, and then the bullish trend directly resumed. Here, 2-day pullback of a given point value, and those point values have not been exceeded. Now the first one came in just a little bit, it pierced through it a touch, so it will depend on where we open up tomorrow. But if we happen to be down, I'm going to be comparing this decline to the decline that you're going through at that moment, and I think Apple's something that you can look to pick up into earnings. So that's one place that's going to be very important to focus. And then of course you've got some other primary components here with Amazon. Obviously a lot of news driving that today, but not a lot for me to say about this chart other than it's maybe a little bit extended. Continued strength here if it can try to push for those highs prior to their earnings report. Can definitely add some fuel to the fire. And the last and my personal favorite is here with Microsoft. So I feel like Microsoft did a pretty good job of holding up well today. I will also say at this point in the trade, this is kind of where I consider it to be, you really don't want to be too emotional about these situations, because at this point we have done everything we can to be in the position for the move. The squeeze fires to the long side, and now all we need to see is that we can either make that 1272 extension, or if you'd like to be more conservative with taking your profits, taking those off when Microsoft hits a new high. But I'm going to try to squeeze a little bit more of that out into earnings. If Friday happens to be strong, maybe I'd take a little bit of it off. But that's my outlook for the S&Ps, three major components that will help track that, and hopefully that'll be helpful as you get into your expiration trading.